lungilitasil sa katangartial al satellite office ra olbira kalulaw nga ra orior mlamot talklo kama na truy ulbunga mla yang lakar ngi ya kita mleset tertial meeting al ngaringi ara adra ADB leng ngaringi executive director Asian Development Bank al kukmle visit travelur belaw ulangit talwase lemitra committee matirgel ku committee members al sabaril al join makulangit tertial wase me de terali الويا البيسيت ترين مي الأدرى سينة الروكو إلى بو تتاك يدسان ترمان أدرى ADB المقتقر تير عملين الكوكومي سايقل ديفلوبمنت ما يقل كوكوراوريور نغر السيلا Pacific ma alsela igal buk pelur belau meng kato mereka sulela country officer ADB ngara pelur belau ngaringi Alfonsa mangaringi country governor sergi dengan nga kela pudoy ma kakidale elway ikeda ma swini plaobesra last name rakaw hindi eredik tira first name ma kakidale mangkaltaral din tira kalawra lomantri tira plaobesra clan hindi saygiti ako ra moktekartal meeting ra ilang mangletwo maleng malukok langaringi akari del kirel tial doru ringi el resolution ma kok langaringi akari rangi dil kokora development el ADB involved ringi el bol sebaril kokora hensim el bol lungi la klawada le lungi la auto sueder roku il kirel legal development ra ADB ngal sablur belau ma aikal kokurere dan ngari maka tamre ngaswa sule la Alfonsa man adra ADB office ngartiang e pai introducer kamame Caleb ngaringi floor leader Senate ngartiang el senator Gray Mariur mangaringi vice president ra Senate at ngakal senator Quartey president ra Senate tamlam usang dal sibel trama mending dem tangalitan meeting magidi mo ay seringi yang ngaringi senator Rudim ngartiang dire kangaringa senator Sungino senator Brian Banayday senator Inabo ngartiang ma senator Nakamura ya vice chairman tel committee senator Aldebe dire kalkim kauklet militero ng mga maklay ka lurior ngartiang dire kalumget mang tangaringa members sa committee ete ka erenti ngil katati mo kawatang era uriul pinisura kamanda hindi mo tengek merasa kemamal senator serokun ngartel kaldibla adirek el malolsing ra meeting lo mong gamiw adirek el boda klawan tale boda kawatang era igal book development lurior ngaringi el albang el all time malaway se Alfonsa ma elebe baik pes kemete almum introduce ra kal el director gid mar members kami mo ais ramok tegal gid mula sang raul mo karaso da mekaldib ka meeting el logi wa tengamir kami ma email nlay apol tapstria opportunity ra senators el kuk mo okeraker mal Michael kukora our reasons why kata tam akaldib le kata tu kuk sada development gid ra ADB ma Michael kukuro yol ngara sela belur belaw Michael el kuklomes el mamut mokra ngar matatan mo adang kalau isek mas katean sulang yang kita presiden tra senate naman matalor kit sulang presiden tra senate udle Alfonso makmuska te alam bom introduce sa kumiro ko yem ko na mokroli alda alsit sa mula sa wara tokor omu ladanya kamsulang
kamsulang chairman akting utal te ale malawang asulala president ra senate ma vice president ra senate ma floor leader telte ale sa amal me ko hensigel ko questions regarding artial legislation and madam yun lar officer president mako kultur ke ko ngudado atorang bard malsel ang kal kupne o Mr. Yidel understand so I'd like to introduce first our executive director. Our executive director will literally introduce herself and her role in the whole diagram of ADB and its relationship to Palau. But just to give an overview, we are a member of ADB, and of course we all know Lwasing. There's a representation at ADB at the governor's level, the director's level. So for Palau, Caleb Udoy Jr. is our governor, and our alternate governor is Elway Iketa. And then my colleague at the very end, that's Zoe Gintaro. She's with me at our country office. And then Swirigal Basang is just finishing her term in ADB. She represented Palau with RED. And with that, I'd like to just give the microphone to RED. Yes, so she can introduce and give clarification, yeah.
Thank you very much, Alfonso. And if I could start by conveying my respects to the President of the Senate, Vice President of the Senate, and Senators and Excellencies here assembled. And thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to join you this afternoon. It's a really great honour. And it is just a great pleasure to be back here in Palau. I made my first visit to Palau in 2023. Having arrived a couple of days ago, I now wonder why I left it so long to return. You have a truly, truly beautiful country, and it is my great privilege to be back here. As Alfonso mentioned, my name is Rachel Thompson. I am an executive director on the ADB board of directors, and I represent 11 government shareholders of the Asian Development Bank. That includes Australia, which is my home. Here in the Pacific, I have the great privilege of representing Palau in its capacity as a shareholder of the ADB, but also the Federated States of Micronesia, Nauru, Tuvalu, Kiribati, and the Solomon Islands. Elsewhere, I also have the privilege of representing Cambodia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Hong Kong, China. That very diverse group of members is actually the largest constituency grouping on the ADB board of directors. So in my role as an executive director and a member of the board of directors, I am based at ADB headquarters in Manila, but I regularly travel to meet with the shareholder governments that I represent to better understand how ADB can better support them and work with them, and what the shareholders that I'm privileged to represent need from me as their representative. And so that is the purpose of my visit this week to Palau. I've already had some very useful and constructive meetings with a range of parties about offering some reflections on how the bank is doing as a partner, how we can do better, and also a great opportunity for me to see for myself the context here on the ground. There's really nothing like seeing it for yourself, I think, to really get a better sense of how the Asian Development Bank can do better as a partner. I understand that you are considering a resolution that would allow Palau's ADB governor to vote in favour of the proposed amendment to the ADB Charter. The ADB Charter is our constitution. It's our founding document. It has never been amended since the bank was established in 1966. So as a bank, we're nearly 60 years old, but this is the first time that we've amended the charter. So it's been an experience, I think, for all of us. It doesn't matter, how long you've been a member of the bank or how big a shareholder you are. This is, it's been a journey, I think, for all members and indeed for ADB management. It is a particularly important amendment, though, and certainly my colleagues and I on the board of directors took very seriously and weighed very seriously the decision to recommend to the Board of Governors that they vote in favour of this amendment to remove Article 12.1 of the ADB Charter, which is commonly referred to as the Charter lending limit. Perhaps just briefly to explain why this amendment is so important. The current lending limit, as the name suggests, limits the amount that we can leverage ADB's balance sheet. It reflects practices that were in place in the 1960s, not the kind of standard banking practices that are in place now. We are now starting to reach the point where we either need to remove this provision or we need to ask shareholders for more capital in order to remain in compliance with this lending limit. And it is certainly the view of the ADB Board of Directors that it is preferable to remove this limit from the Charter because we believe that we can, without going back to shareholders, continue to advance the purposes for which ADB was established, continue to provide development finance in a range of forms to help Asia and the Pacific to grow and to prosper, and still be in compliance with international best practice when it comes to risk management. While we are seeking to remove the Charter lending limit, that is being, we've sought to reassure governors that we as a Board of Directors have also enhanced our internal risk management policies so that we will be able to provide ongoing oversight as to the degree of leverage that the bank is taking on. So by removing this limit, it is not as though ADB management will be unconstrained in its ability to lend money or the terms on which they can lend it. There will still be very strong oversight from the Board of Directors. And we in turn will remain accountable to ADB's Board of Governors. And as the representative of 11 shareholders, I want to assure you that all of the governors that I'm privileged to work with, are very active in holding me accountable for the decisions that I make on their behalf. Just perhaps finally, in a time of, I think, global and regional uncertainty, I think it would be very concerning if the Asian Development Bank were to be in a position where we were not able to advance new finance. But that is that would be the consequence if we are not able to remove this provision of the Charter. It is not, the Charter obviously, as I said, is our founding document. It's not just a policy of the Board of Directors. It's not like I and my colleagues can issue ourselves a waiver to kind of get around it. It's foundational, and we need the support of all of our shareholders, ideally, in order to move forward. For this resolution to pass, we need the support of 2/3 of all governors, representing not less than 3/4 of total voting power. We're getting close, and our current deadline is the 30th of October. We're not quite there yet. And Palau may not be our biggest shareholder, but you are a very important shareholder. As Australia's Foreign Minister, I think, once said that, multilateralism requires that a system in which no country dominates and no country is dominated. I think that's true of ADB, and it's certainly an institution in which Palau and all of the bank's Pacific members are incredibly important, and certainly I feel that as the representative of 6 of the bank's Pacific shareholders, I and my colleagues have a very special responsibility to make sure that the interests of Pacific members are heard and addressed. I won't pretend that we always get it right, but it is certainly an endeavour that we are engaged in with tremendous energy and commitment. So, Chairman, I'm very happy to take questions that you or colleagues may have, but let me conclude my remarks there. And again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and indeed for the incredibly warm hospitality that I've I've already enjoyed in the couple of days that I've been here, and I'm so looking forward to getting out over the next few days and seeing more of this truly extraordinary part of the world. Thank you.
Director, thank you for the meeting, and as well as coming to Palau and meeting your office, and we are certainly happy to be sitting here and talking to you as well. As we know, we invite most of the senators to come in. They might have other questions that they might want to ask. But before we get there, I would like to give an opportunity to our the governor for the ADB to also give us a little insight of what they might proceed to be in foregoing developments that we are facing today within the country, and maybe just give us a highlight of the development of this resolution that actually came from ADB's office and transmitted by the executive branch, and the intentions, and maybe Governor, you can kind of give us the more timeline of how you want this resolution to be done at the Congress within the time framework before the due date of the voting, and share a little bit of comments if you may, and see, and then from there we can take questions after this. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, President, Vice President, Floor Leader, Chairman, and Vice Chairman, and Senators. Thank you for making this a larger courtesy call than was anticipated when we first worked on the schedule. But I think it's a great opportunity to find out more about what we're actually talking about with the proposed resolution, and a little bit more about what the Asian Development Bank is doing and what they're involved in here in Palau. First, if I can touch on the resolution a bit. We had an extension of the deadline for making the vote. As our executive director has said, it requires a certain number of members to vote and a certain number of votes to be cast in favor of this to happen. I think there may be some confusion when people look at a request like this to lower capital limits. But as executive director has said, this bank was created in 1966. Banking back then was very different from what it is now. I would say that capital management in the banking sector is a lot more rigorous now than it was back then. This is after the banking crisis that happened in the 90s, and subsequent to that, the subprime mortgage crisis. So banks have more requirements when it comes to being regulated as it relates to how much risk they're taking compared to the capital that the bank holds. The proposal is in line with recommendations, international recommendations. These recommendations are also being implemented by the World Bank, and the ADB is at the forefront, AAA rated institution in terms of the debt that it raises. But it's not so much that it needs money to lend, but it needs ability to lend more. And the reason for that is really climate change. The amount of money that is forecasted to be needed to address the challenge of climate change is monumentous. So the bank is also taking this opportunity, aside from other strategies, to really try to address this challenge. And this capital limitation change will allow that capital to be raised, that money to be raised much easier. You could sort of say that the bank is too conservative, and we need to lower the limit to allow it to be more in line, more competitive with other institutions that provide the same sort of financing. So that is the main purpose of the resolution. if OEK, who authorized membership in the bank, agrees to allow this vote, then it just takes me to go online and cast a vote. It's quite simple as a process. It's really important that the country agrees to have that limit lowered, and each country has to make that decision on their own. So it's quite simple. It's just almost a technical issue for us from the governorship and the Republic side to recommend to the OEK that we support this capital limit easing. So that's in essence what this request is about, and we support it and have asked the president to make that request to Congress to support. The ADB sometimes is often confused in terms of what they do for us. This is a member bank, kind of like a credit union. We are all members, and we all contribute and receive from our membership to the bank. Of course, we're a very small shareholder. Often we are on the receiving side more than the giving side. My belief is that all the major countries that are members of the bank, and there are quite a few, are supportive of this amendment. But because you have to go through the national process of getting approval, it takes time to get the required numbers to make the vote. So I think this result of this action will be more available funds for not just Palau, but the islands and other small countries that are really faced with some major challenges with climate change. Some of the associated challenge with things like climate change, COVID, are large impacts on our financial situation. We had to borrow, as you know, to cover expenses through COVID. ADB was the first to come to the table to help us, and they've been very innovative in coming up with additional programs to help us become stronger financially. These are the recent policy-based loans that we have implemented. The $12.5 million that helped Koror State is an example of that. And we are in the process of working on proposing another larger loan, as we had talked about over a year ago. So we are a very active participant with the ADB. They provide a lot of assistance, not just through loans. We do get grants through the Asian Development Bank. I don't remember if we put out publicly the $2 million grant that we just received for the sewer project. That was a grant through the Asian Development Bank. They worked very hard on getting us that money. The other assistance that we get is technical assistance. We have probably in the millions of dollars worth of technical assistance that the Asian Development Bank is provided to Palau in many different areas. They are helping us right now with climate change. They're helping us with border protection. They're helping us with the sewer project. We have about 5 consultants that are working with the PPUC and the Ministry of Finance to resolve that project as soon as possible. And I think we've been helped greatly by those consultants. And this is something that I had requested from the head of that division of the ADB. And she said, whatever you need, just let us know and we will provide. And they have done that. So I think PPUC is benefiting immediately, and we will benefit over the long term from this assistance. The bank reacts to the membership. The members as a group tell the Asian Development Bank what are our priorities. There is also a regional tell. So the Pacific Islands tell the Asian Development Bank what is our priorities and what we would like you to work on. And then individually, each country works with the Asian Development Bank to come up with a country program. So we do have a regional program and we do have a country program, and they're aligned together. This is maybe just a broad overview of what we've been doing with them lately and why this resolution is important so that we can do more with them. But I think it's important that we recognize ADB for making an exception. As you know, we're classified as a high-income country now. That means we're not eligible for concessionary loans, but the Asian Development Bank has come up with a special program to help, especially countries in the Pacific, with financing for climate change and other challenges, and that is that 40-year 1% loan with a 10-year grace period, which is a common structure of this loan to help those who need the help most. So we are a beneficiary of that, and I think we would like to take more advantage of that opportunity to borrow at lower interest rate cost. As you know, many of our loans right now are over 5% cost to the Republic. 1% is basically free money if you think of it that way. So I'll leave it at that. I don't think Director Ikeda has any comments, but if you want him to answer, I'm sure he's happy to speak today. But, thank you again for the opportunity to sit here and share with you about the Asian Development Bank.
So lang thank you, Governor, for the well thorough review and the outlook of the programs that ADB is facing and the Palau's development going forward. And thank you for explaining that concessionary loan thing. I think that's important for everyone to know. It is very considerable offer and program that's been initiated for ADB and the Republic of Palau. We thank you for that. Other than that, look, we really appreciate the director to be here and joining us, Governor and my other ADB. I think it'll be best that we give the floor to some of the members of the Senate for any questions that they may want to ask. I think this is the opportune time to do so. And we'll consider the resolution. As you know, Senate is gearing up for their upcoming session, and I'm trying to talk to all the members to get to introduce this on the next day session. Other than that, I think the resolution is quite well written, aiming on the particular issue that ADB's main office wanna do, and of course. Will be tailoring the committee report. The committee report is basically supportive of the initiative that ADBs want to do and the government of Palau want to initiate forward. But I'll give the floor to all the members. And Vice Chairman is here, a member of the committee. Senator Inabo is also a member of the committee. Senator Nakamura is also a member of the committee. Our floor leader is also a member of the committee. Senator Gray Mariur. Senator Rudim, also a member of the committee. Brian Maraire is one of the members of the committee. And some of the senators here are also, but we're all here in one consensus to understand and to brief ourselves with the situation that we're facing with this resolution. And thank you for the explanation. Yeah, we're not, it's an in-depth situation of the bank that, and some of the matters in it, we quite need more clarity for understanding. And I think we understand it thoroughly. Anybody want to have any question, members? Senator Inabo? Then follow that, we'll give it to the Vice Chairman of the committee, Senator Aldabel.
We thank you, Executive Director, for coming to Palau and to help us understand this change to the ADB charter. My question is, I mean, we're a small country, and probably our contribution is very small to the fund that keeps the ADB operating. So, as far as risk, we are not too concerned with that. However, it's important that ADB continues to provide the excellent services that you have been giving to us and providing to us, the grants and the loan that has helped our economy stay afloat through COVID. We are truly grateful for that. But for this resolution, removing Article 12, Section 1, does that mean that ADB will be able to raise more capital by borrowing instead of raising money from its members as a part of its contributed capital? And if that is the case, the only limit on the borrowing authority of the bank rests on that specific line, right? There is no other limit on the borrowing capacity of the bank if this part is removed, if Article 12, Section 1 is removed. Therefore, I just curious, what credit rating agency rates the bank, and what regulatory, like the United States, there's a bank regulatory, FDIC regulates all the banks and make sure the risk is manageable and doesn't. So if you remove that section that limits your borrowing capacity, who will be the regulatory agency that tells you, oh, you're borrowing too much, you're lending too much, you're helping Palau too much, and it might be a risk to you? I just want to see the picture, because when you're looking at the balance sheet right now, it seems like your stockholders your stockholders' equity is 50% and your borrowing part is 50%, and that's what's available capital for doing all the activities that you're doing. So just kind of curious about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Senator, for the question. Maybe just to say, Palau may be one of our smaller shareholders, but your vote is still absolutely important. It's important to me. I know it's important to our president, and small does not mean unimportant. I think is certainly, I think, something that I would want to reinforce. You're absolutely right that this is needed in order for us to be able to provide the kind of financing and services that not only Palau but others in the region have benefited from and should continue to benefit in even greater at even greater scale, particularly in view of the exposure of our Pacific members to the impacts of climate change. You've asked, I think, though, a really valid question about, well, what in the absence of this provision is the kind of oversight that would be applied. Within the Charter itself, there is a requirement that the Board of Directors apply sound banking principles. The way that has been, we've tended to, over time, interpret that is to basically look at the kind of banking regulatory frameworks that Governor Adui was referring to earlier, not least those promulgated by the Bank of International Settlements through the things like the Basel regime, adapted obviously to the unique characteristics of ADB as a multilateral development bank, which is an international organisation. So we are, in effect, self-regulating, but we seek to apply the same kinds of frameworks and strictures when it comes to capital management that would apply to a financial institution of comparable size to us. That is certainly the framework that informs the development of our capital adequacy framework. That is a policy that is approved by the Board of Directors. Every year, the Board of Directors reports to the Board of Governors, but it's something we release publicly, which is our annual report, which contains our financial statement. So at least once a year, there is transparency as to what our overall levels of capitalisation are, and transparency as to the activities of the bank over the course of that year, including new commitments of loans, be they on ordinary terms, concessional loans, grants, technical assistance, etc. So, as I said at the outset, with the removal of Article 12.1, I think certainly the view of the Board of Directors is that the ADB Charter itself still requires us to apply sound banking principles. That is a concept that has, the interpretation of which has evolved with international best practice when it comes to capital management, and will continue to do so. We, as a Board of Directors, through the Capital Adequacy Framework, provide ADB management with, I think, clear guidance and clear guardrails as to the amount of risk the institution can take on. ADB management report to the board on a regular basis about their implementation of that framework. The Board of Directors also approves most of the financing that the bank extends to its members. There's not a huge amount of delegation, I must say, to the ADB president, who is also, of course, the chair of the Board of Directors. So I guess we have a policy, we have regular reporting, but we also have a degree of accountability when it comes to our lending activities over the course of any given year. And I think the totality of that, I think, makes us confident, and certainly confident enough to recommend to our shareholders that this is a reasonable way forward. Oh, and sorry, you asked about our credit rating. Yes.
Yes.
We are
credit
AAA.
agency.
Yeah, we're AAA across S&P, Fitch, and Moody's with a stable outlook. And the AAA rating is the bedrock of our business model, leveraging the difference between what we can borrow at what the bank can borrow at in international markets, and we then on lend to, obviously, to members. That AAA rating is, I think, as I said, across all three rating agencies, it's a stable rating. We've never been anything other than AAA, and certainly a key consideration for us in setting the bank's capital adequacy framework is maintaining that, because we do continue to see it as the bedrock of our business model as a development bank.
So the rating agencies, like Moody's, they come to the bank and check all your lending activities. They check your capital activities, capital raising activities, and they check your financial reports, and then give you the rating. Or how does it work? How do they give you that rating? Do they do it from the Wall Street, or do they come to your headquarters and really check your financial reports?
Yeah, so I know that all three ratings agencies maintain an active dialogue with our Office of Risk Management and our Treasury Department. As a board member, it's a bit beyond my knowledge as to whether or not they happen in person or virtually. All of the ratings agencies have their own models as to kind of where they locate their teams that undertake multilateral risk assessments. I think the other thing you could look to is so whenever ADB issues new bonds into the market, those bond issuances are always very well subscribed. And, as an international organisation, we generally enjoy a degree of sort of legal immunity, but one dimension in which we do not enjoy immunity is with respect to the kind of disclosures that we give to bondholders.
So the underwriting agencies for your borrowing bonds, the bonds that you're using to borrow from the market, is it done by the international market? Where do you sell your bonds, in the U.S. stock exchange or in the international market?
So I think what I could say is we're issuing, the bank is issuing bonds in many markets around the world. A lot of that is denominated in US dollars because that is sort of the default currency of the institution. But ADB has also had increasingly a strong presence in smaller sort of local capital markets, helping to really, by us coming in and issuing a bond in local currency, that in and of itself can help to develop that market. We've had some success with that, particularly in Central and West Asia. Sometimes that involves issuing perhaps the first thematic bond in that currency, which can also help to develop a market or indeed a deeper market for those kinds of products. So I can certainly follow up through our office here in Palau with there is publicly available reporting on all of the bank's capital raising activity that I'm more than happy to make available.
Thank you. So my last question, the growth, ADB has been providing financing during COVID, and now after COVID, what has been the bank's growth, and is it exceeding the ceiling now, so you need to remove it? Thank you. What has been the growth since COVID started? Thank you.
No worries. So just to be very clear, we are not currently in breach of the charter lending limit. If I, as a member of the board of directors, allowed that to occur, I would feel duty bound to provide my resignation to all of my shareholders, because that would not be acceptable. And indeed, I think it is because we do not want there to be any risk of us breaching inadvertently or otherwise, or getting close to breaching this limit, that we have sought to bring this to governors now rather than waiting until we get closer. At the point at which we initiated this amendment, it was expected that perhaps towards the end of next year, we might, subject to the growth in the bank's business. So obviously the more business we do in the short term, the closer we're going to get to that lending limit. We haven't actually closed our books for the year. We don't do that until the 31st of December. So we'll have a better idea towards the end of this year just how close we're getting to that. But it's, to be very frank with you, it's closer than I would like. This, from a matter of good governance, this worries me at a personal level, and I think it also has implications for the bank's ability to plan to continue to expand its operations. So I think, again, in the current sort of global and regional context, in a world affected by climate change, I think it is preferable for ADB staff and management to be able to plan to really, ramp up our activities to support members like Palau, without being concerned that this lending limit might be starting to curtail that activity. But to go to your question about lending volumes over the last, I've been on the board since the beginning of 2023. In the last, over 2023 and 2024, my recollection is that we've written about 24 billion in new business each year. We could, particularly subject to this lending limit being removed, we could do a lot more. Part of it is determined, though, by the appetite of our clients to borrow. And you mentioned, and the Governor also mentioned, the support that ADB provided Palau during COVID. Absolutely, I think we significantly increased lending activity during COVID. That has meant, obviously, though, that members, including some of our largest borrowers, are emerging from that with a lot more debt than they held going in. And necessarily governments are having to balance new lending over paying off debt. And so, I think as a perhaps as a general response, I would say, I think, our business is healthy. It has room to grow. We want it to grow. Certainly, with the removal of the charter lending limit, I think that would really, give us, certainly the board and management, confidence to move forward. I hope that's helpful, though.
Thank you. Kind of help us understand. And we thank you for allowing us to continue to borrow at concessionary rates at 1%. That will help us with our economic recovery. So we thank you for allowing us to be even though our rating has changed, we can still borrow at that. So thank you so much.
Ito lang Senator Inabo. Senator Erdebel.
Good afternoon. Good to meet you, Executive Director Thompson. And good to see you guys, Caleb, Elway, and everybody from ADB. Thank you for this opportunity to come before the Senate committee and clarify the intent of this amendment. I think it's very important that as a representative of the people, we understand what we are going to be endorsing or in the form of a resolution. And I think it's pretty clear that the world is changing and demand for a lot of things is increasing. And especially what Governor Caleb mentioned, that the issue of climate change has become a worldwide event or topic of discussion, that a lot of the attentions, especially from the lending institution, are turning their priorities toward climate change issues. And so I definitely see this this amendment as a great benefit for Palau, being one of the most affected by the climate change, and thereby I believe Palau will be benefiting from all the lending opportunities that the bank will be able to offer to the affected countries to mitigate and their impacts of climate change. So this is a very good thing, I believe. But I'm just kind of curious, sort of same curiosity with Senator Inabo. Is this something? Is ADB part of its strategic plan to expand your lending facilities to include other areas that might appear to be in competition with the traditional commercial banks? I think that will be a question that might be raised by the private sector. It can be a concern that I just want to make sure that what we're doing is not going to be bringing more competition to the commercial banks.
No, thank you, Senator, and that is absolutely I think a very important question. It's a question that we as the board of directors will often put to ADB management when they bring forward a financing proposal for our agreement, because I guess we know that demand for development finance across Asia and the Pacific far outstrips supply. So it's very important that we are deploying the bank's resources in ways that are helping to meet that need rather than crowding out private sector activity. In fact, what we really one of our strategic objectives is really to mobilise the private sector to a much greater extent, not least because of the kind of fiscal constraints that many of our sovereign clients are experiencing. Perhaps for context, ADB is best known as a sovereign lender, our balance sheet has about 152 billion worth of net loans sitting on it. Of that, about 94% of it is sovereign lending. We've not traditionally been a big direct lender to the private sector. Increasingly, though, we have an ambition to grow the private sector portion of our business, but in ways that are genuinely additional, that are helping commercial banks to go into areas where they are not currently operating, including when it comes to the kinds of investments that are necessary to promote adaptation to a changing climate, to operationalise countries' NDCs. So rather than, so we are absolutely concerned about the risk of crowding out the private sector, particularly alternative sources of finance, and equally concerned with trying to mobilise and crowd in more finance to support the more sustainable development of economies across Asia and the Pacific. Increasingly too, with some of our larger sovereign clients, we're also helping them to think through what the next phase, for example, of big infrastructure investment might look like, and how the private sector might be able to play more of a role, either in the construction phase or in actually more sustainably operating and maintaining infrastructure, which, to be frank, is something I think all development banks have really struggled with. We've done a better job, I think, of financing infrastructure than we have of helping clients to operate and maintain that infrastructure. And we absolutely cannot allow the bank, I think, to continue to be party to, or even the suggestion that we're contributing to a cycle of build, deteriorate, rebuild. I don't think that's ever acceptable in the current environment where there is just not enough money to go around for the need. That absolutely, should be something we're guarding against.
Thank you. And just to conclude my remarks, I just want to say thank you again for your role in overseeing, representing the Palau, among the many other countries. I see there's a lot of small island countries and some big countries under your portfolio. So I appreciate you understand you just started this role since January of 2023. So, but you seem to be hitting the ground running, and so we appreciate all the efforts you're doing to make sure that the countries under your portfolio are well taken care of. So thank you very much.
Floor Leader, Floor Leader Senator Mario Cabo.
Yeah, thank you for visiting Palau. My question is, I will be asking Governor Udoy, and then he'll translate those questions to you. Udoy? Okay. Udoy, kamatingan wasang daringi sel la almilkot mokla. Wadu kwasang modia katarar ti alon ragaspa. Imle maknalia presidente mo pangkela PUC mo negotiate ADB. Luasit tiang sa pedal dia katarar ngi kom finish the project. And then akad start talar ngi. Walu akad maharar ngi bal sa pedal direct mo kekre payment ngi. And say yamle concern Udoy le tiang amlamo more than tiang amlamo telang 12 years. Project sal kangertel project imle 9 lolbi 9 OEK. Ilakad nga na 12 di nakapaluror. Siyam ni concern was a belter pagtumamrege buto statal peringi. Seguidim lo president ma ada ADB ma PUSIM lo magerulia MOU. Ma government lang perseguid loan pera 3 million rair. Namo telal teong edira rakal tara orangi edira kal dira kapal mereka. kautel dirigulu ay sel wasem naring sel 2 million la grant through ADB kom mobile mo finish tier project. Hindi gidire ka lomes ringil waset tiang amon bol meu de mo o sebel tial besel di aku mo sebel bolo oruringi ko mam ar tial mo pan moradif. Makpuesto na say gal concerner belaw. Ay gan sabihin man mo madala bordra ADB yung talong tilablur belaw mo ADB. Was ADB mo sabihin mo suwil mo di akal pertialon until ang mo mereka tial project. E por sebel del perni. Mas segi dia ngil kel ko mo korwa ADB lo tial ne negosyo niya kumra lo sendim nakal por madan ne omtera ADB mama se tial sabihin mo madala bordra. E bolo mesel ngit talong tilablur belaw bol sebel ko ngir tilablur belaw.
I think her answer will say whether or not I explained right. Sure. We talked about big payments on the law, sure, until we resolve problem, sure, to finish. And the president will do what he can to negotiate. But they would like us to have ADB consider that thing to work on the project, which is scheduled for next week. The challenges are really more further the issue of privacy or
Okay, and I should, Senator, say from the outset too, I should offer you my apologies that I don't speak Palauan. When I first took on this role, it was my aspiration. I was going to learn a little of the local language of all of my constituents, and I got as far as the Solomon Islands, which has many local dialects, and it was a bit beyond me. But thank you, Minister, for explaining the question, and thank you for the question. Which I'm happy to speak to. I mean, there is a bank policy that applies to all of our clients, that where a borrower is in arrears on its repayment obligations, there comes a point where the bank ceases to provide any new financial assistance until those arrears are dealt with. It's a policy that applies across the board to protect the interests of shareholders, to be fair to all of the bank's clients, and it is also, I think, one of the things we would point to as constituting sound banking practices. So ultimately, were Palau or any other member to choose not to meet its obligations under a loan agreement by making sort of scheduled repayments, that could ultimately end up in a situation where Palau or any other member was in arrears, and that would cause ADB to, management in that situation would have no choice but to not proceed with providing any new financing. There are also, I think, agreements between a number of the development finance institutions, such as the World Bank, that if a member is in arrears with one of us, then that can also have implications for their ability to access new financing with those other institutions. So it is a very serious matter, and certainly I'm aware of a number of our members, even when they get into when they have a range of fiscal challenges, I find generally do try and keep current on their obligations to an entity like ADB, in part because we are generally the cheapest source of new finance, and and also the value of the other sort of technical assistance, etc., that ADB can provide that goes along with that finance as well. So I guess just to make clear that the practical implications of deciding to not make repayments under an existing loan, and I guess also just to reinforce that applies to everyone. It's not singling any one member out, but it is a long-standing policy of ADB, and World Bank has similar policies.
Kaleb, Minister, Governor, akum da kita teligil awan atyal ne asende kada pergi, abela sub el perte alone. Hindi kita atyal project na mo more than 10 years, na mo 12 years el dakalurur. Kita pergi dakalurur. Amne issue bela se mem the hold of pertial payment alone ne dergit tel project tu bo to pergi. Kamadenge le suera dakal connect maro ko loblir order. Di side bla di dakal tokol blar order dakal connected el masuer. Etiang amne girel extended moraira amno dakal borairai. Edirga kabon mare kita amna mo start el pergi. Awul ma olbir amne decide la se mela kada ase ndura ADB la se dagi pergi until kada finish the project and then agim uppergi.
And apologies, I did not deal with the part of your first question as to scope to pause or defer payments until the project is completed. So ADB as a multilateral development bank enjoys what is called sort of preferred creditor status. So in the event of default, we generally always get paid. That is part of what underpins, certainly it's an important factor that the credit rating agencies bear in mind when they are thinking about our credit rating. So it's important to our AAA rating. I'm certainly not aware that ADB has ever renegotiated a loan with a sovereign client in the way that you're describing. That is something I would need to go and talk to. I would need to triple check my information, but certainly I am not aware of us ever having done that. In part because the bank is, I think, very careful to ensure that there is no question as to the currency of our preferred creditor status, because of how important it is to our ability to serve the region as a whole. Having said all of that, I do just want to sort of reinforce that I do understand it. In fact, the project you're referring to was very much something I heard a lot about in my first visit. I'm as Minister Adui. Governor Adui mentioned, there has since then been a lot of technical assistance provided in respect of the project, as was set out in the MOU that the Deputy Director General of the Pacific Department and the President signed. ADB remains very committed to working with Palau to get this project completed, which I believe is scheduled for the middle of next year.
Awlu bengkel talgari kadira kalau setiang dimna kal subiun ngon mor madala bord. Imduk mutagi da ungtil ablur belau. Project na mo more than 10 years diga bol merek. Mablur belau alngi telo aseme mo complete tel project. Ebul sebela belau per tel loan. Sel gumda setia dimna kal bor abor tia dimne tigagi de leom tera ADB me mga gura presidente mer ko li tel MOU. Makaswak tel problem belau labor madala borda. I mean, olbi la sola problem belau bor madala borde ko lomes ni se temgarang subil ngosuir ablur belau. Kung segi dia pelgetak ne sol olbi ra kululaw la se ngul mora madala borda ADB lo mes segi lo temgarang subil ngosuir ablur belau. Sige, di amne sola.
Oh, okay. So the senator's main question is when the issue first came up. So the question from our Congress is, was it brought to the board level for consideration, right? So that for CASP, that the country may stop payment, and then when the finalization and the completion of the project is done, and there's a formal turnover, then the payment can resume. So the question is, has it come to the board? And if it hasn't come to the board, is it possible to bring to the board?
Sorry. In terms of certainly, I think when I visited in 2023, I think it was at about that time that President Whipps wrote to the then president of the Asian Development Bank, Masa Asakawa, outlining, I recall, concerns about the project. That letter was copied to me as a member of the board of directors and as the director representing Palau, and I believe the ADB president responded to the letter reiterating the value that ADB places on its partnership with Palau and indeed our commitment to that project. But it is, there has not been, if you like, full board consideration of any proposal to change the terms of either this loan or for that matter any other loan for the reasons that I outlined earlier. I would find it, and I don't believe that is something that would be.
Yeah, and I think just to clarify and to understand the relationship between the board, right? And so for us, ang letter, the consideration and discussion goes to our highest level, which is our Director General of the Pacific Department. That's the highest level that it can go. And then with, of course, our president. So the discussion was in that level. It never went to the board level. It's basically, yeah.
Yeah, so certainly I, as Palau's executive director, have been very aware of this project and of Palau's concerns about it. The action that has occurred since then, including the mobilising more technical assistance to help get the project back on track, has very much been at the direction of ADB management. But I have definitely been kept informed of those actions as they've gone along. In a sense, it would only come to the board of directors if there was a specific decision for the board of directors to make, and that has not been the case up until this point. But I guess the key point I would want to underscore is that these Palau's concerns about the project have absolutely been taken seriously at the highest levels of ADB, and the bank has certainly, if I thought there was anything more I could ask ADB management to reasonably do to hasten the point at which the project can get completed, I would absolutely have sought that, and I'm sure that the governor would have had no hesitation in telling me that that's what he needed me to do. So it is not ADB, I think, I would want to reassure you, Senator, does not take lightly that this project has been a source of concern for Palau, and does remain committed to it being completed, as evidenced by the assistance and support that has been mobilised more recently to try and get it to completion as soon as practicable.
Sel Babylon teng le address sel morgumi dortir.
Mlera ma'am.
Di lokor gumi mergong.
Actually, mlora presidente ra ADB. Emrogo niya sisir ka ma'am. Matir. Mang directly mlora President ADB.
Dim lang al discuss ngil full board on dim lor ngi margong yang me engul me.
Why say? Dim lang albora board level. So there was no discussion in the board level about the concerns is what is being asked.
No, that's correct. The board typically meets to approve new financing proposals. We do also meet to consider reports from ADB management, but I am but I am not aware that this project in the course of a board meeting has been brought up. That is just, I guess I wouldn't want that to be interpreted though as somehow a reluctance on the part of the bank to engage with the issues in the project itself. It is not as though we have, as a board, that we would regularly sit down and go through every single transaction the bank currently has under implementation. Does that make sense?
Siya emel dio ay silo sing ngaram de kan tersel babilang ila president el mortir. Siya amlo nga kapir ngiling. Dia kan soma mo ngil ngora mal discouraging at sub president al usya babil mura board mura chairman ra ADB, and they don't discuss it and put it away while we're paying that loan today.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I understood that.
Yeah. So the letter that was addressed to the president of ADB, they want a copy because they want to be part of the discussion of that, which we have. But then also to be clear, in 2023, when they came for the mission, there was a letter specifically from Congress. Other ADB, the board member, right? So she's very well aware of the issues, right? Or the question of cell discussion at board level, president, management takes care of it.
And apologies, sir, the other thing I should have recalled is that, and you're quite right, it was a letter from Congress to President Asakawa. I myself went and met with President Asakawa after that letter was received and before he responded. So certainly, and the president of the bank is also the chair of the board of directors. He is effectively the highest authority that there is in the bank, and certainly my own recollection of that conversation is that he absolutely took very seriously that that Congress had felt the need to write this letter. Perhaps for added context, I don't go and just see the president about just any issue. But this was one that I felt strongly I needed to bring to his attention, and that is absolutely what has informed his response, but also the significant investment of additional assistance that's been provided in relation to the project.
Yeah, I just want to raise a concern because it's very disappointing when you don't answer our president letter, and now we are paying that. That's our concern.
Yes, no,
And
absolutely.
the project is not finished, and we were trying to loan some more money to finish the project, and we were not allowed when we are paying the project now, and it costs us 3 million every year for unused sewer system in Koror and Irai.
No, and so I absolutely, I think that point is extremely well made. I think, again, I would just want to really reinforce that the unhappiness about this project, it has absolutely been made known and understood at the highest levels of ADB. I will leave it to Alfonso to follow up on a copy of the letter that did come back from the ADB president. I certainly took it up directly with the president. That advocacy is part of what has led to the additional support that should ultimately make it possible for this project to be completed. That in no way detracts from, I think, the important lessons that need to be learned on all sides as to the implementation of of this project. So I would not want to leave you with any sense that ADB has not taken these concerns seriously, because I would want to assure you it absolutely absolutely is a source of certainly something that has been taken seriously, and it is not a source of happiness for the bank either. We don't like it. It does not reflect well on, I think ADB takes seriously, it does not reflect well on our reputation as a partner when projects do not live up to expectations. And so I would want to reassure you that, again, the lessons that are there to be learned from this project will absolutely be translated back into, how we operate going forward.
Okay, Senator Rudim, I have a follow-up on that particular question, and then from there we move to Senator Maraire and then move to Senator Nakamura.
Ali, Ms. Rachel Thompson, welcome to Palau. I have a question on this procedure on your ADB on the risk management. Along the same line with this concern about the CASP loan. KASP loan stands for Koror IRI Sanitation. The letter A is missing, a whole state of IRI. So I'm not just asking about the role of the ADB on the risk management. If the circumstances change, what is the role of ADB to make sure that the risk has not increased to possibly affect the payment capacity of the consumers or the Republic of Palau, because it did not meet the requirements of the loan as initially agreed to? And because when they did the audit, they just did one side on the local side, and they put 99% of the blame on the local party, of which they relied on a professional consultant to guide them accordingly before they dispersed the funds out of ADB. How did ADB miss that checkpoint and release the funds? Therefore, now it's a debt without the completed project. Can you help us understand that? Because and how do we file a complaint to the ones in charge, the custodian of the funds, that if we see any misstep, how do we seek a remedy from ADB to make sure the funds are being spent wisely, or there's a lot of transparency and accountability to that as to productivity? Can you help us share what's the mechanism? How do we report beyond the local office that's possibly not showing the information that we need?
So if anyone considers that the ADB has breached its own policies or procedures, we have what we call our accountability mechanism, which is an independent mechanism that reports directly to the board of directors. Generally, there has to come within the scope of that accountability mechanism. There needs to have been an alleged breach of ADB policy and procedure, some harm caused to two or more people, and it has to be in relation to an ADB financed project. So you need something ADB has financed, but a suggestion, an allegation that we've, in the course of providing that finance, not complied with our policies and procedures in a way that has caused harm, is at a very high level. And I'm more than happy to provide you with details of the mechanism, which is available on the ADB website. If the complaint is found to be eligible, then what we call our compliance review panel undertakes an investigation. That investigation then leads to findings of fact. That report is then provided to the board of directors, and then ADB management is tasked with coming up with a remedial action plan. So that is, I think, the ultimate sort of recourse that people affected by ADB financed projects have to a form of redress. There is a requirement in the policy that project affected people first try and resolve the matter with ADB management Yeah, so I'm more than happy to sort of provide you with some additional information as to the specifics of who did what when. You'll appreciate that is that is a bit beyond my specific experience, but I'm sure we can see what additional information can be provided.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, we appreciate the financial assistance and the technical assistance from your office. The question in your power and in the boards of governors of power, it's a fact that the cash project has not been completed. It is a fact that we are getting charged for something that is not providing any service that was initially required. So the OEK ratified the loan documents expecting a result or expecting a service that should be in place. Knowing those facts, and the question from the floor leader was, and the president of the Senate is, can the ADB reconsider that since we don't have the service ready and the finance was done without the checkpoints? So I think there's a lot of blame to share back and forth on the expertise of the consultants. Can the ADB reconsider and look at the loan again for the payment plans, kind of move it, maybe extend it a little bit more, give us a friendlier rate while we catch up and have this thing fixed? That's the question, and that's in RPPL 11-31, on a section that the circumstances of the cash has to be done before we make any payments. And then this letter was done, and then they signed the MOU, and now therefore we're still burdened with a debt of $3 million, I think, a year. And that's debt with a PGST tax 10% on a service that we're not receiving. So it's a double whammy against the consumers of Palau. In your power, is there any avenue to remedy this and to kind of lighten up the load on the debt burden to the consumers and PPUC?
Sure. So as I think there is I think ADB management would make a distinction between I think there is a distinction between the outcome and the financing. As I said earlier, generally, and I'm not aware of any situation where ADB has renegotiated a loan. We're not like a commercial bank in that regard, certainly not with respect to our sovereign clients. Again, that goes back to the fact that we enjoy preferred creditor status as an international organisation. I'm more than happy to test this further with ADB management on my return to Manila, but I do not believe that is something, just to be very straight with you, I don't believe that is something that the bank would be open to. That is not specific to Palau. That is an across the board policy which we hold, again, because of the importance of our preferred creditor status. As an institution, we generally always get repaid, and that is a big part of what enables us to maintain our AAA rating and use that to provide development finance across the region.
Thank you, Ms. Rachel Thompson. When you bring this request for another reconsideration request for this particular cash loan, can you include in the request or provide information as to how the Congress or the Republic of Palau can file a complaint to check the process for transparency and how it is being made, how the requests are being made? So if we see that something is not being done right, or there's a delay, or there's a deviation, then at least ADB is aware, everybody's aware, so we keep everybody in check, so to make sure the service is provided according to the loan documents or the loan conditions. Because I think the people are being unfairly charged for something that has somewhat or negligible outcome right now.
No,
But please provide that if possible. Thank you with that request. Thank you.
No problems, and definitely through our Alfonso can certainly provide details, as I said, of our accountability mechanism. I don't want to comment either way as to necessarily the eligibility that is determined appropriately by an independent panel, but it is publicly available information, and so have no issue directing you to it.
Ms. Rachel Thompson and the Board of Governors, this is no means I don't mean any disrespect to you. This is about the facts that's happening now and the reality that we're living in, and we need help. So please take our requests and for consideration for maybe to help lighten up the load for the Republic. Thank you.
Senator Marairay.
Chairman. Welcome to Palau, Ms. Thompson. My name is Brian. I just have a question for you and then a request for your local representative in Palau, or even Caleb or Elway. If Caleb can do it in Palau, it'll be much better. But if not, then Elway or Alfonso can do it. The question to you is, it seems to me, and this is a layman's point of view with Article 12, I'm kind of redirecting the discussion to the resolution. It seems to me that the purpose of this was this article was to ensure stability and solvency within the bank. Am I half correct or a third? Okay. So with Palau Congress approval of this resolution, do we become liable to the bank's insolvency, whatnot?
Yes, no, thank you, sir. And absolutely, this was a provision that I think was included in the Charter back in 1966, as Governor Adui mentioned, reflecting prevailing practices at the time. And in seeking the approval of the Board of Governors to remove it from the Charter, certainly the Board of Directors' advice to governors is that we can ensure the ongoing financial sustainability and stability of ADB without this provision being in place. That is because the institution is already very well capitalised. We apply, as the Charter also provides sound banking principles. We're adopting international best practice when it comes to our capital management. We have a range of policies in place that ensure that, as well as a range of reporting mechanisms between ADB management and the Board of Directors that gives us confidence that we can remove this provision without imperiling the bank's financial stability. All shareholders I think your financial exposure is limited to your shareholding. Part of that shareholding is paid in cash. Part of it is at call. And the removal of Article 12.1 does not change any of those arrangements. So your financial exposure, if you like, before and after is unchanged from a shareholder perspective, separate to the client perspective. I hope that's clear.
Thank you. Elatiagi da ngaralem gaul Governor Udoy ma Mr. Igeda ko ngarakil ka alternate governor ma country representative Kosiba. So ka other three sel tokol bulgeringi el tokor belaw lentiagi kidel ngara al sel tiang an ab tokor kumya ngar tiang understand the tel toy di ngaka dia mar other belaw ngaray create tial blay mo mesay gat toy wa sitil ka ngarat tamasa tiang amokte garingi gire deruli mar other lo mesa terori lo mo understand tiang ngaral tokoy loldu ringi yadot pi wal sugumong adongok labang karangan mata time abelaw mo kirel mo nyangar alir al silaygay siya number 1 siya amdi kari good morning dar masar ADB aong erong aso ka other three tial organizational structure rabang mabay operations ringi altang amo sa help programa mo understand na kami wasa kami nga nga review man sel po nga gidel issues namdum raula en kada understand lo siya issue makarang adosa tra al sila bang tuguni makarang ade mo governor mora border governor makarang ade mora border director artiga nga mga dere datang a governor mga dere da director ang director ang mga dere da governor como sube ser tang las mal gora di gomben el toy di tokol adel ngaray krel la TV bar ngaray krel tel blaya da kalo dingay te liure lang al país mo di mo ka klima ber adom tali sulang
Mo da do atro belaw. Dawa gulong do atro nga. So 2003, yeah, belaw amle approach sa ADB. Will ask for membership to the ADB. So sell application, more trigagi del board of directors, in which it's a time and the abo the member. So 2003 ang long, and that is when sige del application agi at tigin ngay makadamo member at 2003. In the charter, may guidelines ADB, there's 69 member countries. Tigero rule mo Minister of Finance, Senator Mario namle Governor ADB. Tigero rule Minister of Finance Regel Balu, tigegi the Governor ADB. Tigel ko tel ngarba balong ra artial ADB as shareholders, governors. So the Minister of Finance, tigegi the ngara governors, emoko tigegi the mga dredrengkang ngal executive director ngang adi ngar sel board represent igel interest gith, right? So under her ang gid ma tigagi the baby rablul lul saud ela kamam el obis ngartiang kamama angar alam el coordinate lo bangel governor ma alternate governor ma executive lunch leadership el wasing ngarang priorities ra akuk leadership ra blur belaw marogul to el gimorul amal di government driven ndia ka to el gimong atmok el di ka request el mergamam ma sel gibem tu ngarni yegi del gora a meeting el gimong atmok ra bekra every year mama di ngara guidance ra governor ra ADB ma alternate governor sometimes daitorio depending el wasing ngara gora sorin mga tmokla esegi del wal beginning ra year agi gut maklia wa gi mom dodoring el wal country programming ege a list according to the government's request agel government priorities ra balu esegi da gi mobang el wal gora map programa melgi momesring wasay okay magarang agi bora headquarters egi mongot mok el malaya adish gel lo whether it be a law no malubang technical assistance kita mal mring ergi de president trasenet el mala grant lang mal ngarba ba GDP gid ndi gimal malas mal mangat mok ngi through agi the technical assistance masegi da ulagi mo help para wa PPUC lob titra engineers el may senator malaire madngi gimal ne closely orelo bangel ertial caspel direct men kamamal ng officer tiang open el morar other uy el mera officer kamamal suko mga concerns hindi kamama degi bertiang egi mo do rabalu leng kamama hukti multilateral bank abalu belaw abalu so sel nganya question el merse agim maldi director ngil mora governor kamam lengagi do omteer abalu belaw ndakal nga madakal zoe o kamama walgim gora di medium or segi del communication okay so segi that's basically it ngel minister of finance ra igal 69 member countries ngegi da ngara sitra governors the governors emorong itigagi del executive director sergid angar say every day el represent ra ngegi del wal interest sergid el belu I hope pese gora telgi bel help
so como seringi wadil ka loreng serga da kamo dang lital bank ya kamo understand ngi kala ensera question na
hindi ka tiyak hindi ka understand
nga telo asal so como ngoy gaul mo nga layman's perspective
Oy,
loreng
oy.
serga tingi
Oy.
understand ngi engkal ensera question na kalo singis
Okay. Well, I hoping it helps. So kung mandagel sa pembrulil mo talgibal mo understandable, please. Thank you.
Di ako mal musulang akong daswim na mo understand para mo te karabang ke metong ulan mo sa Senator Nakamura.
Ms. Thompson, thank you. Governor Ului, everyone, thank you for being here. I know this was a visit, a courtesy visit, but we have a lot of questions. But I want to get our attention to the Joint Resolution 12.7. The last 45 minutes while sitting here, I've been able to gather all information and learn about what ADB is, what our membership is, etc. So I have some set of follow-up questions just to make sure that I can get the answer to help me when I cast my vote. So in 2023, we requested, we applied, then we became a member. There was a law passed back then that authorized an appropriated amount of $41,498, which was supposed to be the actual subscription of the shares, the paid-in capital. So the first question, Governor, is that the entire paid-in capital that we are liable, or is it just the 50% that is called upon by the actual charter? Because there's callable and actual paid-in capital.
Well, I'm not sure if this is quite the division of responsibilities that was intended, but sir, I can certainly direct you to the information that the ADB publishes about each of its members, including Palau. The fact sheet that we have for Palau, which includes its information about its shareholding and voting power, indicates that its current paid-in capital subscription is $222,000. I can't speak to how that was appropriated or managed, but that is certainly the publicly available information, and tallies with what ADB's records represent.
Are there any other shares that we have not, that because in the charter it divides up the shares into two. There's callable ones, a promise to pay, and then there's actual paid in. So those $200,000. I don't think that's the par value. I think that's
So that is what is listed as your paid-in capital.
Paid-in capital. Okay,
Yep,
so over the years we probably have paid, or I'm not sure how, but do we have any? The reason why I ask for the callable shares is because that becomes a liability later on in case something happens. Okay.
No, absolutely, and so we've not, as Alfonso mentioned, I believe Palau joined in 2003. My recollection is that the last time we had a general capital increase would have been 2008. We've not had one since then. And so I believe that is the figures that ADB has published sort of accords with the paid-in capital they have received. It's the ADB charter that sets out the circumstances in which callable capital can in fact be called, and that the charter is quite clear that is to prevent ADB defaulting on payments to bondholders. There is a report that I recall ADB management published last year that explores this in some more detail, because we have management has been with the board been looking at ways in which we could perhaps get more value out of callable capital as a source of capital without actually requiring members to pay it in. So I'm very happy to provide that report to you.
Okay, and then excuse me. I asked my friend the ChatGPT to figure out how many shares that Palau has in ADB. But if you have a fact sheet, can you let us know what's the percentage? My math, I think it was 0.004 or something.
0.003.
Oh, so off by 0.001.
Well, perhaps they're using an extra decimal point to round up.
all
But
right. I just kind of did the math, and that's what I came up with. All right, so 0.003.
yes, and the total number of shares held is 342. And just to clarify, that paid-in capital subscription of 222,000 is a US dollar figure valued as at 31 December 2024.
2024. Okay,
Yep.
so
But
very
again,
recent.
this is publicly available, and more than happy to. I'm sure colleagues from the country office can.
Yeah, I was trying to look for it online. I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
in your
our website is not
yeah.
the best. It
Okay,
could do with
all
a
right.
redesign. So.
And then the next set of questions, and just this is just information. So how does obviously these when you have banks, you have certain limitations. You make sure that you have enough assets to cover your liabilities, etc. So I understand that. But how does ADB get their funds? Of course, through its paid-in capital, initial investments of $1 billion. You get you issue bonds. Of course, you get income from loans that you process. Any other that I've forgotten? Any other source of income to ADB? And then maybe grants. Somebody donate some money to ADB. Besides those four, any other source of revenue to ADB?
Yeah, so I think those are those four categories would cover I think most sources of income. Certainly, the bank does receive funds from donors, including, for example, Australia is a significant donor to the bank. Our largest trust fund is the Asian Development Fund, which has been through several replenishments. Japan and Australia together are the two largest donors to that fund. There are also a range of other trust funds with more specific kind of focuses, such as the Urban Resilience Trust Fund, which was the source of the $2 million grant recently signed in relation to CASP, I believe a few weeks ago. But certainly happy to, the bank publishes our audited financial statements every year. Those are provided with a report to the Board of Governors and made publicly available.
Okay. And then, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, ADB is chartered in the Republic of the Philippines, subject to Philippine law.
So as an international organisation, we generally enjoy immunity from domestic law. So as I said earlier, one of the dimensions in which we do not enjoy immunity is with respect to the sort of undertakings and information that we provide to bondholders, which are typically governed by the law of the jurisdiction in which the bond is issued.
I see.
A lot of financial securities law is sort of references UK law, but as in the same way that the World Bank and the IMF all of the development finance institutions, I would say, enjoy this kind of domestic immunity by virtue of being an international organisation established under treaty.
Okay. So with that said, where is what is the name of the organization that governs or resolves disputes? Or unless you tell me that ADB is subject to every jurisdiction's.
No, and that is a very valid question. So the accountability mechanism that I referenced earlier in response to the Senator's questions is one of the functions that exists to demonstrate that ADB is a responsible holder of the immunities that we enjoy from domestic suit. In place of domestic labour law, we have arrangements that allow resolution of disputes with respect to our staffing arrangements. The ultimate body that determines those disputes is called our administrative tribunal. It's staffed, it's a sort of a quasi-judicial function, but that if you are a member of ADB staff, that is where disputes about your terms and conditions, etc. would be.
So it's
would be
just
taken.
within the organization, that's the dispute resolution.
Yes, and that is true of the United Nations system. It's
Yeah.
true of World Bank, etc.
IMF, yeah.
So yes, the accountability mechanism and the administrative tribunal are the two sort of main main functions. I guess the other thing I would say though is that we do take seriously our accountability to certainly to shareholders, and so there is a where the bank doesn't act appropriately, and the World Bank has had some experience with this in relation to some of its activities in Africa, for example, where there is a lot of public scrutiny that the bank is subject to that certainly provides a degree of accountability.
Okay. Now, finally, this is
So the Governor was just reminding me that, of course, membership is not obligatory. So any member who feels that the organisation has failed to sort of live up to its expectations or values can exit. We've never had a member exit. We've had members join.
yeah,
but
I see the article that deals with that. Yeah. Okay. Now, on a different topic, and please bear with me because I'm new to this. I'm a new member of Congress, but GDP, and I've heard a couple comments coming from individuals here about GDP. I think we really need to go. I think every country has different set of different situation, different circumstances, different, and so to have this so-called economic indicator that sort of governs every country or policies relating to requests from each country. I think that it's probably time that we need to rethink about that, because and I can debate this with anyone in this room. Palau's goods and services, which GDP measures, are controlled by a handful of individuals and companies. So when you have that control by the few, how can we say that that is a good economic indicator for a unique country like Palau? We have no exports. I can count with my 10 fingers how many money comes in with respect to different sectors and governments and donors. And those funds come into a handful of people, corporations, and as well as governments. And so it's just not a plea, but a request. Maybe it's probably time to rethink about how we measure and the unique and take into account the unique factors affecting each of our states. Okay, thank you. Seguida, question, Chairman.
Do you want to
Sorry,
follow up on-
I took that as a comment, but certainly okay, good, thank you.
So lang Senator Nakamura kada Senator Quartey? Ulang.
Sulay, Chair, I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm nosy. So, the question mo Governor Udoy was it tell resolution na unmang mera olbil is because of the constitutional requirement, right? Di kalbebi rabalong the decision by the governor.
It depends on the country. So the bank, just like the World Bank, asks the country first to check your rules and see if you're able to make the vote or how else you need to make the vote. And then there is a second step, which is to actually make the vote based on your ability to vote. Yes.
No, hindi po blotak because I suspect Del Wase, if he was not part of the Constitution, we wouldn't be sitting here discussing this issue. It would be just up to you to vote. Second, Ms. Thompson, thank you very much for coming. I know it's been a lot of questions because we're, at least I'm kind of ignorant about ADB. My good friend to my left have never shared the structure of ADB to me. So I heard the sentiments about CASP, and it's never been quantified or cost analyzed to see what has been the economic loss, because that particular social safe security structure is not working. And as a development bank, there has to be some mechanism by which the bank can say, as a development bank, it's part of our responsibility to look at, did we develop the country because of the loan that we gave, or did we set them back? There has to be some mechanism to look at that. After all, you are an Asian development bank. So I'm just saying what, and not I'm not a money person, but I wonder if there are economic developments that would have taken place if this project would have happened on time. It's halfway, it's incomplete, and people of Palau are actually paying $3 million a year while we're borrowing money from ADB. So I'm just please feel, you don't have to do anything about it, just feel how I feel as a person that looks at all of this and just questions why. When we know the capacity of the place is not good enough, and there are local companies that would have done the work, but instead we got companies from Italy, not totally of our own decision. There were experts on the ground deciding also with us. I am so sure that there's a recourse somewhere, because if a $28 million project like this continues to be accorded to small island developing states, I don't think that's a really good thing for ADB to be announcing around. So just you don't have to just comment. Thank you.
No, so but if you will permit me to thank you and all senators for the opportunity of this engagement. It certainly helps me to better understand the local context. So thank you very much for your patience with me, and I do sincerely apologise if my rabbiting on in English was in any way unclear. I will rely on Alfonso's good support to clarify anything that needs to be clarified. And I did perhaps also, and it was very remiss of me not to perhaps share with you in my time on the board of directors, it's been my great pleasure to get to know both Alfonso and Zoe, and I just would like you to know that they are incredibly valuable members of ADB staff. They do an outstanding job of advocating for Palau, but more than that, they more than hold their own amongst their peers from across the region. For the last 2 and a bit years, I've also had the immense privilege of having Sweetie Kalbasang from Palau working in my office in Manila as one of my advisors. She had an extensive background in the Ministry of Finance before being nominated to take up the position of Director's Advisor at the ADB. I have 2 of these positions. One rotates through all of the Pacific members of my constituency, so there are 6. One rotates through the other non-Pacific members of the constituency. So it is not an opportunity that comes up very often for a Palauan to come and work in the executive director's office in Manila. And I guess I would want you to know that she has more than, I think, lived up to the trust that Governor Adui placed in her in nominating her for the position. I've learnt so much from working alongside her. She has been a truly outstanding ambassador for Palau. I hope sincerely that she's coming back to you here in Palau with some new skills, some new ideas, a new outlook that she can bring to helping to continue the task of furthering Palau's development. And just to, I've extended my thanks to President Whips and to Governor Adui for sending her. But I guess I would also want you all to know just what a a truly exceptional individual you've had representing you in Manila, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing her career go from strength to strength on her return. So thank you.
Hale, chairman ng di soalogera albonsae. Hindi nga ulang ugera albonsang so kay kal tol blado dong almral momodong. Magariga kasi hanggang yaw right adal doy kal tol mokbong adang kadam do raurong messenger.
Hindi kay Presidenta Senate ng kay gidang sa ilang kaselbong yung mga president tra ADB, management tra Pacific Department, hindi ka more babarang kang.
Okay, hindi kang
yes, proper.
Di soal make sure ay katol do nga amrail morsel official kirel morngi.
Oy. Mga maging artyang I'll make sure wasing mo.
May say.
Oy.
Mang adidor gorngi di ka bola selva nila presidente blo de kalspen morba ve dimlario e modibus.
I see.
Merang seriously.
Yes.
Kita blal sertial dalla laurore incomplete. E kita dire como den el gire del mutul melen ra el milion mo complete celluro rai. E way al gal sep edel adange way say. Ba ulak ti soal make sure ya e kada mo do ramral adel bong en bosep el obong lital governing board de ay sertil wa se ay gagid ay gel lurungulira other belau. El orang mal bakita rendil girel tialuriol dirga kabol merek dirga giri los per audo del mo complete tringi dial gamit tel ngar belo mo ado mister tele lauror en dial sibel mo merek legi tel lebang ringi mlamut tel albui ramla memo kada kadul tabdi sella almlo ligit lo sem dilera payment el mok ekada pa yo bitok leme tamel kurgido wasen giru lo siga akrant el mo finisher tial lurora amina to wasi ek tial me al dirga mo do akrant mang siadi concern na geng ya dia ka ngodal al sebel matol mong el
Oy, kamsulang yung President Senate agi mal make sure ba sa gerokul lamdong relang alngal mong enggang like I said ang kaya ngil ada dong sa duringi and then hindi kal roller ka mamal update ra Senate ra cast panding siral mesel bavira gang sira bavira Senate tal merengang esegi dam let trigger ka mamal leng sel CL o magi mo osiga grant tel meringer bela nga grant. So, siya mahal mula niya chlorally. Right? Mle trigger sa gidal process, maging o siga grant na mga mokrakas pa. Oo.
Ulang Alfonsa, maulan sa Senator Singino.
So, Chairman, just a quick question about the statement you said about accountability mechanism. Is there a committee or a board?
So the accountability mechanism itself is a policy, and that policy establishes the compliance review panel. That panel consists of a chair and 2 other members. So it is that panel that considers complaints that are brought to it. They then apply the policy and the eligibility criteria to the complaint. If it's eligible, then they seek the agreement of the board of directors to go ahead with an investigation. The investigation is authorised, it goes ahead, and they ultimately then report back to the board, and we ask ADB management to then respond to that by coming up with remedial actions for any instances of non-compliance that the CRP, that panel of 3 has identified.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I was listening to this CASP discussion about if it was supposed to be presented to Alfonso and goes to the governor and it files to that accountability mechanism for it to start investigating on who's the main player who hasn't done their job, like the ADB consultants. Are they responsible for this? Because I don't know if we jumped the bullet or something, or we didn't go through that process and we wrote a letter to the president of the ADB. So that's the question.
No. So you've it is in the accountability mechanism exists as a, if you like, as a last resort. The policy, in fact, does require people bringing complaints to the mechanism to first have tried to resolve the dispute with ADB management. And so, and ADB management is personified in the ADB president. So I do want to say that, and again, I've been on the board now for 2.5 years, and I've spent most of my career in the Australian Treasury, so the equivalent of your Ministry of Finance. And even I find some of this stuff a bit confusing. So you're in good company in that respect, and certainly when we go back to the office, I will, Alfonso and I can and the governor can have a chat about what else we can do to make things clear. But that accountability mechanism is an ultimate kind of recourse. So because you can't take the bank to court, it's a way of people being able to bring complaints about how we've operated.
Yeah, thank you for that, because if you look at the window outside, it's supposedly there should be a 10-story building. If the CASP would be working, you would be watching a 10-story a resort building across the street, because that was the intent. Those hotel companies were supposed to build that because of the CASP program that didn't take effect. That caused the delay of building a hotel there that's supposedly be paying for the CASP, and the citizens are paying for the CASP right now. So that's just my view on it, because if the CASP would be working, we'd be watching a 10-story building right across the street right now. So thank you.
Bang Senator Rudim Senator Pedro ngaring aswan.
Alfonso said, and I think we discussed this. The question is a legal request for the developments of Palau. I got TA. I got that initiated by ADB. They're through the executive branch to you.
Yeah, it's never ever initiated by ADB.
Okay. So, on some executive branch deliver my ADB. Yung question Congress against the executive branch for participating in this implementation of this project. Now recourse as well congressional independent body through ADB to check the process executive to the ADB to finance. Because in your regulations it says no action shall be taken. Complaints should not be entertained if they are about decisions made by ADB. This is Minister of Finance sa Governor, a push legal project, ang fumble legal projects, yung problem or belal waisel audit report. Ngara recourse malubang ngara madins bela olbi laglulaw malubang other belal file a complaint saying something's not right malakal pipeline, malakal vertical integration of that process.
Okay. I think Senator, first and foremost, when a request comes from the government to ADB, it comes through the governor, right? And in our experience, Rabalubelao, it's never a one initiative, one way action. So for example, a CASP, spiritual example mo, a CASP lang niya project steering committee ringi, right? It'll involve a role stakeholders, right? And that included a Senator Malayde, include a Governor Ayray, ma Orior, ma EQPB, all the relevant stakeholders ang alseltiang. Include a Senate direct. One a senator, one a delegate, right? Kamama, all Ministry of Finance, the governor, always invites. The decision to come and sit around the table, madingar other will invited, right? But Akmal Madingel was say, in those project steering committee meetings, everyone is represented. Ayel concerns that are other represented. And if you go back, I'm sure nga niya minute rayel direct, mansibir lomes. So, daksal Madingel was saying, how sa paamal kuk tigamam manggel mle Minister of Finance sa kuk tigamam mga tmokrad email project, it doesn't happen. It's below. Ooy. Makora.
No, the question is the intention, expectation was made initially for stakeholders, community meetings, to set the expectation. However, sa start the project, elbonia deviation, mga cost increase, delay, then ang mechanism as tower same and that continue to create more damage.
The project steering committee makes all those decisions. The project steering committee makes all those decisions.
Yeah, disbursement ang yung ADB custodian raw daw, that's their money. Hindi ako lumis nga sa tinawa high
Kaya
risk.
aludo dam. Tiablan nga bulur belaw.
Okay.
Oy. Tiya sel nga bulu it's a tiya bulu.
Man discretion ra. That's the last talaga cash from the Ministry of Finance. Man discretion ra Ministry of Finance cell group or cell steering committee. Maulma sila give us the audit to shift trouble on more segit because you have already released the funds. That's mulak mas burden am the shift ng tiro daw ng more cell steering committee ng Ministry of Finance. Itilya ang wala al mrula kay phase payment disbursement legal phases. So ADB has no hand in there. Okay. Leng sir doreng sa do Alfonso to help the office with that process.
Yeah.
No, to help the process, Alfonso Tiagin, sel gimong do other evolution do. You know, ADB is a large institution. Musisi kumbali. Misalong do and their expertise mga intimidate ra. Okay? Misal suman takmo representatives sa other pero say ADB said so. And then it becomes they use ADB as an excuse or a shield from the discrepancies mo legal termalalaw. So just to put that on your records, I say we're trying to find a mechanism to have an independent eye looking at it, maka check and balance ra ADB, manggel a representative of Republic of Palau, protect the interest of stakeholders. Isa domes at yan is not going termal lang. Mag-sir ba ko explain mo kal guest regidra saying kung madagim disrespect at tial kumbali, agi tralom sa akra at tial wala ko termal lang. Makakunin ito kakao sa wakar ito direct at same please explain. Hindi sige the mechanism needs to be fixed. Manda ka sabi a politician / marakla governor malulung political whim or some other project ala ka transparency na gigid. Sulang.
Oy sir ma'am sulang senator it's well taken nagimal mo discuss. Yeah.
Chairman halang di last time rungoy bamraile. Ngake Alfonso direct malkansun nga. Tial tokora kiaspa. Legidam le ula problem el at trial malaki badanged ringed dulu asya ADB ul. Sigita kansun nga. Kale di vai di ble legid tomlil. Emergo el at trial loba ADB wasi a project tadim lakbol mereka manggiriul makarang. Sigita gire del mokurgi kringi Brian leng kamlara urior mang. Di swadal mom dangel wasi tiya kami ul stakeholders kali lu ul tial monday iba do ulu padangedra ADB lakabait harabol sede di eble ligida ul tial problem di so kapol clarify len tiga uriul eble ligida ul monday edo ba ADB lul kura amo ul sisbernil basel lagi harar tial urior len ngamiam karang. tiso ka volunteer.
Sulang yung Presidente sa Senate. Sulang.
Waulang sa Senator Marairay. Hindi tira-tira nga rin labor nga yung katawmi at itong almost talti ay malbong o korete as marityang.
Sulang Chairman utaka nartang mo 8 minutes. Ari nga follow up question na kalmura Alfonso ding mlamdo nga takoy kira ka clarify ni. Bebol blakatak kertial blay metian meeting chair lo si Senator Malaira dimna kal nga steering committee. Dila kata lang nga steering committee. Members sa steering committee ay institutional. Director of Public Works ani member a steering committee. Hindi adile ra project ra CASP. Adi yes, lalo nga presidente sa Senate tamrang. Ay kada kal ADB. Dire kal steering committee. Tiyang issue ra implementation. Tiyang contract management or lack thereof. Mebol blok takal sa igid. Tiyagi da kali mo ra Miss Kosibal girela. Awasero guluryo ra di initiated by the member countries. Aku reng sa tilay the statement trakaw wasetyal asilbor aigel country specific projects yung awayse. Aigel guk regional projects albela at muringin. Aigel guk makarang alawriyor. Sulang.
Sulang yung Senator Malaire. Our regional projects are mo tokoy between Governor Abelao, for example. Ilagi damal bato ka regional projects sergi damang FSM, Marshall, Mabalur Belao. So that's usually the regional aspect of the regional TA, for example. I give the specific initiatives or projects that come from that, the TA. At the governors are usually have the same underlying request, right? So an example would be public financial management. Right, that's a reoccurring in the 3-member countries. So spares the support. So we have regional TAs and that's how regional specific regional TAs come. Inya gida di kakaro sa balu mangarni gida request el to o singira kukmal di ngargi de margo at the same time kada malgi di kakaros di for regional TAs nganya rodiol lobang gantiri bulur belao with the confirmation and agreement let's say the governor of Belao, FSM, Marshall. Ito sa tiagida let's say 5 million el mga tmok clear agagi del tril bulu el girela A B C D etira giril wase oy les rumendag endak al mga tmok la.
President Senate respectful senator sa tirka mga tmok kertira ngaringi labor ngira kapsangay. Kumta sa meeting at imilitiang emergong iti katatimre nga saule Alfonsalom te ergitra iti pirbelaw director sa finance Marwas Winnie. Thank you Ms. Thompson for giving us the opportunity. This was well fruitful discussion. I know we have a lot of questions based on CASP. But thank you for hearing us out, and we do have concerns on those, and of course we'll work with the finance office and we'll work with the country management office for ADB to try and get some of these issues resolved. There's only one question that I'm going to ask, and that's going to be a quick one. It's based on the charter lending that we're going to be amending. So if we do amend this charter, are we going to ratify the charter again, or?
So the answer to that, I think, would be a matter of Palauan law, which is a bit beyond my personal expertise. I think, as Governor Adui mentioned, I think each member has its own procedure. So I would defer to colleagues with a legal background. I think the intention of the terms of the resolution, though, make clear that once the threshold needed has been met, the amendment would become effective within 3 months. Yeah.
Okay, we'll discuss that with Alfonso then, but appreciate the time and today, and we'll see you tonight. Appreciate kaila hindi kasama mong director, Governor. Okay. Yeah, so I'll give the floor to Alfonso to say their last statements, and we thank you, either one of them.
Alam kong si chairman at tumlams sige dam imulur al silsa. Sulang ate alle di kala ama di kalom tabe di kam subur silta mending kam tabel waseng dorang tutelel timle korto CBC te pai mar yang tutelel ma ngo si mera bebira kirel am katatel khapse floor leader dia rektiom te kama me orang asuli chair ma committee ma president ra senate ma vice president ra senate o man sulang ma sabi da kaso sa kapsingay sulang hay